I grew up believing that being a good person was enough. In Japan, we have a concept called wa, harmony. From the moment we are born, we are taught to respect others, to be honest, to work hard, to take care of those around us. These values were not rules to me. They were the air I breathed, the foundation of who I was before I even had the words to describe it. But there was always something beneath the surface, a silence I couldn't explain, a hunger that never fully went away, no matter how much I achieved, no matter how many times I told myself, "You are doing everything right. You are a good person. That is enough." It was never enough. I just didn't know what I was missing. I remember the morning I first walked into Masjid Al-Salam in Tokyo. I was 27 years old. I was not there to pray, not there to seek, not there for any spiritual reason whatsoever. I had been offered an administrative job, organizing events, handling communications, coordinating volunteers. I needed work. They needed help. That was the whole story, or so I thought. The first thing that hit me when I stepped inside was not a sound or a sight. It was a feeling. The kind of stillness that you don't find in temples or offices or anywhere that human beings normally gather. It was the silence of something full, not something empty. Like a room where someone had just finished saying something true. I took the job. I told myself it was just work. I started coming 3 days a week. And I watched. That was always my nature, to observe before I speak, to understand before I judge. I watched the way people moved through the space, the way they removed their shoes at the entrance, not reluctantly, but as a matter of course. The way they greeted each other, "Assalamu alaikum," peace be upon you, every single time, no matter how many times they had already seen each other that day. And the way they meant it, every time. Like saying peace to someone was not just a habit, but an intention. A small act of wishing well, repeated endlessly, because people deserve to be wished well endlessly. I began to notice the Japanese visitors who came sometimes. Quiet, respectful, curious. They would stand at the edge of things and look with wide eyes, the way I imagined I must have looked. There was something about seeing my own reflection in their faces that stayed with me. Months passed. I began to understand a little Arabic. I began to recognize the sound of the Adhaan, the call to prayer, and I noticed what happened when it came. Everything stopped. People would leave their conversations mid-sentence, leave their food half-eaten on the table, and walk toward the prayer room with a look on their faces I could not name. It was not obligation. It was not routine. It was something closer to longing. The way you look when you are walking towards someone you love after a long time apart. I started asking questions. Small ones at first. The sister who managed the women's section, Fatima, never pushed me. Never made me feel like I was being tested or observed. She would answer and smile and leave me space to think. That patience was itself a teaching, though I didn't understand it then. One afternoon, she came to me with a small bottle in her hands. She placed it on the desk in front of me with a gentleness that made me straighten in my seat. "This is ZamZam water," she said. "I brought it back from Mecca. I want you to have it." I looked at the bottle. Clear, still, just water from the outside. "Why are you giving this to me?" I asked. She smiled. Not the polite smile I was used to. Something deeper. "Because I made dua for you there, at the Kaaba. I asked Allah to guide you." I didn't speak for a moment. I didn't know what to say. Someone had traveled to the other side of the world, stood in front of the most sacred place on earth, and in the middle of their own worship, their own moment with God, they had thought of me. They had asked for me, by name. I had never had anyone pray for me like that. I had been to shrines. I had lit incense. I had participated in rituals I barely understood. But no one had ever stood somewhere holy and said, "God, please guide Yoki." I held that bottle for the rest of the day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what it means to ask God for something on behalf of someone else. In Japan, we understand sacrifice. We understand putting others first. It is woven into everything we do. But this felt different. This was not politeness. This was intimacy. This was a conversation with God about a person who didn't even know she was being prayed for. And it suggested something I had never fully allowed myself to believe, that there was a God who was listening, who was close enough to hear, who cared about one confused, searching woman in Tokyo. I opened my laptop. I started reading. I read for hours and then for days about the 5 pillars, about the Quran, about the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And then I found something that stopped me completely, a hadith, a saying of the Prophet. The best of people are those who are most beneficial to others. I sat back from my screen. In Japan we say, ichigo, ichie. One moment, one meeting. Treat every encounter as if it can never be repeated. Every person as if they are irreplaceable. Give yourself fully to the moment in front of you. These were not 2 different philosophies. They were the same truth, written in different languages, discovered by different people across different centuries. And they had found each other in me. I began to see it everywhere. Honesty, Makoto in Japanese, Sidku in Islam, empathy and consideration for others, Omoyari in Japanese, Rahma, mercy in Arabic, respect for elders, care for the community, the deep value of cleanliness, Tahara in Islam, a cornerstone of daily Japanese life. I was not discovering something foreign. I was finding the name of everything I had always believed, everything I had tried to live, without ever knowing where it came from. But there was one thing that was different. In Japan, we rarely speak of a personal God. We have ritual, we have reverence, we have the weight of ancestors, but a God who knows your name, a God who is closer to you than your own heartbeat, that was not something I had ever been given words for. The Quran gave me words. I read Surah Al-Fatiha in English for the first time. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, all praise is due to God, Lord of all the worlds. I read it once, I read it again, and something happened in my chest that I had no category for. Not a feeling I had felt before. Something releasing. Like a door opening that I had been pressing against for years without realizing it was always meant to open. Then I came to a verse that broke something inside me entirely. And when my servants ask you concerning me, indeed I am near. I respond to the invocation of the supplicant when he calls upon me. I closed the laptop. I sat in the quiet, and I let myself feel what I had been carrying for months without permission. God was not somewhere far away. God was not hidden behind rituals and intermediaries and ancient languages I could never fully reach. God was here, now, aware of me, and had been this whole time, quietly leaving doors open that I kept walking past. I began to pray. Not the Islamic prayer yet. I didn't know the movements, didn't know the words. I prayed in the only way I knew. I sat in silence, and I spoke honestly. I said, if you are real, I want to know you. If you have been guiding me this whole time, I don't want to miss it anymore. Something answered. I don't know how to describe it better than that. Something answered. The weeks that followed were the most honest weeks of my life. I started learning how to pray properly. I started memorizing Al-Fatiha in Arabic, one line at a time, until the sounds became familiar, and then became mine. I started wearing looser clothing when I came to the mosque, not because anyone asked me to, but because something in me wanted to, wanted the outside to begin matching what was happening on the inside. I told my family slowly. My mother was quiet for a long time. My father asked me only one question. Are you happy? I said yes. For the first time in a very long time, genuinely, yes. 6 months after Fatima placed that bottle of ZamZam water on my desk, I stood in the women's section of Masjid Al-Salam and spoke the words I had been preparing in silence for longer than I realized. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulallah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. Fatima cried before I finished speaking. She hugged me so hard, I felt like I might disappear into her, and I didn't want her to let go. The sisters around me said, Allahu Akbar, God is great, and I finally understood what those words really meant. Not a battle cry, not a slogan, a declaration of awe. What you say when something so perfectly, precisely, undeniably orchestrated happens in front of you that the only honest response is to acknowledge the greatness of the one who arranged it all. People sometimes ask me, Yoki, did you have to leave your culture behind? I always smile, because the answer is no. Islam did not ask me to stop being Japanese. It asked me to be the fullest, truest version of what Japanese culture had always raised me to be. Honest, disciplined, humble, compassionate, service-oriented. It gave me all of that, but with something Japanese culture had never given me. A direction, a qibla, a fixed point toward which everything in my life now faces. Before Islam, I was like a compass that knew how to spin, but didn't know where north was. Now I do. Every morning when I say Bismillah before I rise, I think of that small, clear bottle. I think of Fatima at the Kaaba, thousands of miles away in the middle of her own worship, stopping to ask God for me. A woman she barely knew, a woman still searching, still unsure, still pressing against a door she couldn't open on her own. And I think he answered her. He answered through every question I could not stop asking, through every hadith that landed in my chest, like something I had always known, through every prayer I watched from a doorway, longing to understand, through every moment of wa, of harmony, that I had felt my whole life and never known, was actually something much larger than a cultural concept, something eternal, reaching down to meet me exactly where I was. They say Japan and Islam are worlds apart. I say they were always pointing at the same truth. I just needed someone to walk me to the door.